Alrighty, let's talk about a little bit of algebra here. So what I want to do first, I want to expand these polynomials. I want to multiply these two binomials together. So when I multiply the first ones, I'm going to do like some distributive property. X times x gives me x squared. Then I'm going to multiply those two terms and get a 3x. And notice when I multiply these two terms, I get a 3x also. Because the binomials, the things in parentheses, are the same, when I multiply them, I get two of the same terms in the middle. And lastly, 3 times 3 is 9. So that's pretty neat. When I combine these together, then I get x squared plus 6x plus 9. And notice that I got that 6 because it's 3 plus 3. So we can do the same idea with this middle one. We multiply that, we know we get x squared. I'm going to go in a little different order here. I'm going to do 5 times 5 first. Negative times a negative is a positive, so it's positive 25. But check this out now. Because they're the same, I know that when I multiply those two and these two, I'm going to get the same value. I'm going to get two negative 5x's. So that's going to give me a negative 10x. Okay, so notice that was from doing negative 5 plus negative 5. That gave me my negative 10x. And that's going to help me here. I'm going to write, I don't want to write it twice. I don't want to do x plus 4 times x plus 4. I want to square this binomial. So when I square it, what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply the x times itself and get x squared. I also know I'm going to multiply the 4 by itself and get 16. Now be careful. I don't want you to think that I'm distributing the exponent. We don't distribute exponents. That's no good. But I know that I'm going to multiply 2 of these x's together and 2 of the 4's together. I'm going to get 2 x plus, or x times 4's. So I'm going to get a 4x and another 4x. That gives me an 8x. And again, notice that 8 is the 4 plus 4 because there's 2 of them together. Maybe another way to think of this is that since I have this as a squared term, if you think of it as drawing like a square, where I'm multiplying x plus 4 times x plus 4, maybe you've multiplied things like this in the past. X times x is x squared. X times 4 is 4x. And then you get another 4x. Those combine to make my 8x. And then 4 times 4 is 16. So maybe you've seen that before, that little area representation. That's always pretty good. All right, so why do we do this stuff? Well, what we're doing is we're creating what's called a perfect square trinomial. A trinomial is a perfect square trinomial if we can express it as a squared binomial. And again, notice the relationship that the 6 here is half of 12. And that also 36 is or 6 is the square root of 36. Well, let's make that a 36. There we go. Cool. So that's the relationship we want to do today. We want to make perfect square trinomials and write them as squared binomials. Let's practice a little bit. So if I have x squared plus 6x plus 9, I want to write it as a squared binomial. So I know I'm going to have an x in there. And if you think about what you're doing, you're taking the square root of x squared, or the factors of x squared, and getting x. So let's do the same thing. Let's either take the square root of 9 or the factors of 9 and get 3. And again, notice that if I take that 6 in the middle and divide it by 2, I get 3. That's a neat thing to do. We've got to remember that. Remember to do that. If I go over here to the right, again, a squared binomial. The square root of x squared is x. The square root of 16 is 4. Or notice that if I take half of negative 8, I get that negative 4, and that goes in the middle there. So maybe this is a nice thing for you. Maybe you're starting to see this now. So we can write this one as x minus 7 and square that binomial. And again, that negative 14 over 2 is equal to 7. And notice that if we square 7, we get 49. That's a good thing up there. And finally, our last one, I think you see the pattern by now. It becomes the square of x plus 9. Again, 9 is half of 18. Square 9, you get 81. Some good things there. Okay, so we want to go one step further, though. We don't want to take a trinomial and write it as a squared binomial. We want to take something that's not a perfect square trinomial and make it a perfect square trinomial. So really I'm saying I want to take x squared plus 10x, and I want to put a number in there to make it a perfect square, or to make it a squared binomial. That's what we want to do. And this process is called completing the square. And I'm going to kind of show you it using like a little bit of area here. Remember we did that area multiplication before? So when you do it going the other way, you're going to have your x squared here. And now we got to split these two boxes up with the 10x. So I'm going to put a 5x in both of them. So now, if I look at the top left, x squared is x times x. And then to get 5x, I got to do a positive 5 and a positive 5 there. And then to complete the square, I got to do 5 times 5 and get 25. So the reason why 25 goes in this box is because I'm going to take this 10 and I'm going to split it in half. And then I'm going to get 5. And then I'm going to do 5 squared. And that goes in my box. Positive 25. And then what you remember is that we can take that trinomial and factor it down to get the square of x plus 5. That's where we want to get to. We want to go to this process called completing the square. Okay, let me show you what I mean. Let's first figure out the number that goes in the blank space. Oh, hold on, Taylor Swift is here. Hello, Taylor. Oh, how are you, Mr. Mahoney? Just lovely. What are you going to do? Well, I see you got a blank space, and I got a blank space, baby, and I'll write your name. Taylor, we're good. Thanks, though. All right. I just saw Taylor Swift. All right, so let's go back to the math now. So if we want to figure out the number that goes in this box, what we want to do is we want to take our 8 and we want to divide it by 2, and then we want to square it. So 8 divided by 2 is 4, squared is 16. And then to rewrite it as a perfect square trinomial, we're going to get x plus 4. If I go to my middle one, I'm going to take negative 16 and divide it by 2, and then I'm going to square it, and that's going to give me a positive 64. And then for this binomial, square root of x squared is 8. Square root of square root of x squared is x. Square root of 64 is 8, or half of 16 is 8, but that's wrong because it should be a negative. Ooh, check out this last one. Ooh, mama. I'm going to do it the same exact way, though. I'm going to take my 5 and divide it by 2 and square it. This is where you don't really want a decimal, though. You want a fraction. So if I square 5, I get 25. If I square 2, I get 4. Okay, so that gives me 25 over 4. Leave it as a fraction because you'll see the beauty of it next. And remember, in parentheses, I got to put in the square root of 25 over 4, or half of 5. Leave it like that. I would much prefer you left it as a fraction as opposed to a decimal. But this is the process called completing the square, a good skill to know for algebra.